He always believed that trust was the foundation of love. For years, a black African man carried that belief like a shield, convincing himself that the black African woman beside him was exactly who she claimed to be. She spoke softly, always assuring him that honesty guided her every step. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. And so, he ignored the small cracks that occasionally appeared in her words, the inconsistencies that whispered of secrets buried deep. He chose silence over suspicion, love over doubt. But silence has its limits, and doubt has a way of growing like fire, waiting for the right wind to ignite. The first spark appeared in the form of a forgotten detail. She told him a story one evening, a story he had heard before, but this time her version was different. The names, the timeline, the ending, it didn't match what she had said months earlier. He noticed it instantly, but he brushed it aside. Memory plays tricks, he told himself. Yet the unease clung to him, pressing against his heart like an invisible weight. Days turned into months, and with each passing moment, the weight grew heavier. Little things stood out. Phone calls that ended too quickly. Messages she deleted faster than he could glance. Questions she answered with a hesitation so small most people would have missed it, but not him. He was paying attention now. His eyes, once blinded by love, began to sharpen. His ears, once filled with trust, now caught every false note in her voice. And still, he said nothing. Inside, a storm was building. He loved her too deeply to accuse her without proof. But he could no longer deny that something was wrong. He lived between two worlds. The one where he wanted to believe her, and the one where every instinct screamed that he was being deceived. And then came the night that changed everything. She was later than ever before. She claimed she had been caught up, that time slipped away. But this time, her story had cracks so wide that no amount of smooth words could cover them. He listened, nodding, pretending to accept her explanation, while his heart clenched with certainty. The black African woman he trusted had been lying to him for years. The truth was closer than ever, and he knew he had to be ready to face it. The following days were filled with silence. He watched her carefully, memorizing the patterns of her words, the rhythm of her excuses. She carried on as though nothing was wrong, but he could see it now, the fear in her eyes when he lingered too long in conversation, the tension in her voice when he asked simple questions. She had grown comfortable in her deception, but she had not prepared for his awakening. At night, he lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying every moment of their years together. How much of it was real? How much of it had been carefully crafted lies? He thought of the promises, the dreams they built together, and he wondered how many of those were rooted in truth. Each memory felt like a broken mirror, sharp and painful to touch, and yet he could not let go. He needed the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. Finally, the opportunity came. She left her phone unattended for the first time in weeks. It was there, lying within reach, glowing faintly as if daring him to unlock the secrets it held. His hands trembled as he reached for it, torn between the fear of what he might find and the desperation to finally know. He opened it, his heart pounding louder than he thought possible. And there it was, the confirmation of everything he had suspected. Messages, conversations, stories that did not match the life she had built with him. Evidence that the woman he loved had been lying for years. His chest tightened, a mixture of rage and heartbreak flooding through him. He closed the phone, placing it back exactly where he had found it, but nothing was the same anymore. He knew. The illusion had shattered. Every smile, every word, every moment suddenly carried a shadow. He wanted to confront her immediately, to demand answers, but a voice inside told him to wait. Not yet. He needed to be sure, to hear the lies fall from her own lips, to catch her in the act. The next morning he looked at her differently. She laughed, she spoke, she carried on as though nothing had changed, but he could no longer see the black African woman he once adored. He saw only the deception. Every gesture felt rehearsed, every glance felt calculated. She had played her role well, but her performance was nearing its end, and he was preparing for the final act. He began to test her subtly, asking questions he already knew the answers to, watching her weave stories that grew thinner with each attempt. She still thought she had him fooled, still thought he was the same man blinded by love and trust. But he wasn't. He was awake now, sharper than ever, and with each passing day he drew closer to the moment of truth. And then it happened. The slip. The mistake. The one detail she forgot to cover, the one lie that collided with another, leaving her story exposed. He watched her falter, her confidence crack, and in that instant he knew he had finally caught her. But he didn't say a word. Not yet. He let her finish, let her lie one more time, knowing that soon, very soon, the confrontation would come. And when it did, the years of silence would break, and the truth she had hidden so carefully would spill out into the open. The story was no longer about love or trust. It was about betrayal, about secrets buried so deep they threatened to destroy everything. And as he prepared himself for what was to come, he realized one chilling truth. Sometimes the person you trust the most is the one you know the least. And this was only the beginning. The moment he realized she had slipped, time seemed to freeze. Years of suspicion, silence, and pain had led to this single crack in her carefully built wall of lies. He had her cornered, but he wasn't ready to explode yet. He needed her to reveal everything herself, without him forcing it. Only then would the truth be undeniable. He carried that secret knowledge inside him, letting her think that nothing had changed. She laughed, she spoke, she carried on, unaware that the black African man in front of her was no longer blind. Every word she spoke now felt like a thread in the web of deceit, and he was watching closely as she spun herself deeper into it. But holding this truth inside was like carrying a fire. His heart ached, his mind screamed, and every part of him wanted to shout out, "I know what you did!" Yet he stayed silent, preparing for the day she would no longer be able to escape. Paused, and he began to notice something else. She had grown comfortable in her lies. Too comfortable. The way she dismissed his questions, the way she assumed he wouldn't notice, it all spoke of someone who believed she was untouchable. That arrogance would be her downfall. One evening, as she told another story, he interrupted. Not with anger, not with accusation, but with silence. He just stared at her. The silence stretched longer than she could handle, and for the first time in years, he saw fear flicker in her eyes. She quickly recovered, laughing off his gaze, but he had seen it, the first crack in her confidence. Inside, he knew the time was near. The confrontation was coming. But then something unexpected happened. She began to act differently. Her lies grew sloppier, her excuses thinner, as though part of her wanted to be caught. It was a dangerous game, one that pushed him to the edge of patience. Finally, the moment came. Late at night, she tried once again to weave a story, but this time he interrupted. His voice was calm, but his words cut like a blade. "How long do you think you can keep lying to me?" Her face froze. For the first time, she didn't have an answer ready. She opened her mouth, closed it again, and then tried to laugh it off. But the laughter rang hollow. He repeated his words, sharper now, stronger. "I know the truth. You've been lying to me for years, and tonight it ends." Her mask shattered. She tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but the weight of his words crushed her composure. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. And then, finally, she confessed. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like broken glass spilling onto the floor. She admitted to the lies, to the stories, to the secrets she had buried for so long. Each word was like a knife in his chest, cutting deeper than the one before. As he listened, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal, but also relief. The truth was painful, but it was finally out. He had waited years for this moment, and now it was here. But the truth carried more weight than he imagined. The lies weren't small, weren't harmless. They were heavy, destructive, and they had shaped the very foundation of their lives together. Everything he thought was real had been touched by her deception. She wept, begging for forgiveness, swearing that her lies were born out of fear, not malice. She said she had loved him, that her lies were meant to protect him, not destroy him. But he couldn't tell anymore where the lies ended and the truth began. For the first time in years, he found his voice, not the voice of silence, not the voice of doubt, but the voice of strength. "You didn't just lie to me, you stole my trust. You took my love and built your lies on top of it. Do you know what that does to a man? Do you know what it means to live with questions that never end?" She lowered her head, but the silence spoke louder than her words. She had no answer. And then something inside him shifted. He realized this was not just about catching her lies, it was about reclaiming himself. He had allowed her deception to chain him for years, but now the chains were breaking. If you're still watching this story, make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe for more emotional stories and comment below, have you ever experienced betrayal like this? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Her tears fell, her words stumbled, but he stood tall within himself. For the first time the power was in his hands, not hers. He knew the truth now. She could no longer hide. But the story didn't end with her confession. The hardest part was deciding what to do with the truth. Should he forgive her? Should he walk away? Or should he seek the justice of his own peace, leaving her to the ruins of her lies? These questions burned inside him as he listened to her final words. She swore that change was possible, that she could be better, that she could rebuild what had been broken. But he knew rebuilding wasn't just about promises, it required trust, and trust was the very thing she had destroyed. He stood there, silent once more, but this time his silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. The silence of a black African man who had seen the truth and would no longer settle for lies. Her sobs filled the air, but he remained firm. For the first time in years, he felt free. The lies no longer chained him. The truth had set him free, even if it shattered everything else. And as the night ended, he realized that sometimes the greatest betrayal is not just in the lies themselves, but in the time they steal, the years they consume, the love they poison. He had lost years, but he had gained clarity. And with that clarity came power, the power to choose his own path, with or without her. The story of lies had ended, and the story of truth had begun. Moral: lies may last for years, but the truth always finds a way to surface.